Welcome to Built on Faith Homestead or Leaving Egypt, depending on which video platform you like to watch your content on. Today we are going to move the goats, and I'm going to bring you along for that ride. Hopefully it won't be too wild of a ride. And we're going to talk about how the WEF is trying to embed themselves into the educational system. That's their words and not mine. If this all sounds interesting to you, I would encourage you to stick around for the rest of the video.
Oh, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see.
So first things first, let me show you where the goats have been and what they have done, and then we'll move the shelter and we'll set up the Premier One electric fencing, which, by the way, I'm not sponsored by them. It's just what we use and we seem to like it so far. So I had a before picture and I somehow deleted it off of my phone. But this was all grown up in just really thick brush, thorn bushes, tall grass that was right in here. I didn't even know that tub was in there. Somehow the wind blew that tub off in there. I had no idea it was off in there. There's been some old junk here from here years and years and years ago, but it was all grown up. And you can tell the goats have ate all the leaves off the trees about as high as they can reach. And this brush here, those were mulberry trees that had grown up into the sides of this hay barn. That's my father-in-law's, and I had planned on cutting them down for him because our plan while we live here is to at least make this a nicer spot than it was when we found it, right? That was kind of my plan. And I decided to go ahead and cut them down now while the goats were in here to let them eat the leaves. Those were fully leafed out mulberry trees just a few days ago. So that's how quick they can clear all of this out. But it's time to move them. They've cleared most of this forage out, and so now it's time to put them on the move. So first things first, I'm going to move the shelter. We didn't have the shelter, the goat shelter, where they've been because there's enough shade trees and all of that. I wasn't too worried about them finding a place out of the sun. However, where I'm moving them to, there's not going to be any shade. So I'm going to move their shelter first, and then I'll kind of show you how we do the fencing. Now we have the shelter moved approximately where I want it, and here is the fencing. Now this round is a lot shorter fence. I think this one's only like an 80-foot fence. The one they're currently in is 164 feet. So there won't be in this one very long. This one they're usually only in a couple of days. As you can tell, there's some tall weeds and stuff in there. We finally gotten some rain and everything's greened up and the weeds have jumped way up. And so I'm gonna put them in here and let them eat down these weeds for a couple of days while I set up their next big area. The bigger area, they can usually, depending on what's in there, they can usually last a week or longer in there, but only usually a few days in this smaller circle. So we got the shelter moved. Now we're setting up the fencing. And the way that I like to do this Premier One fencing, once it gets very long, 80 foot to this 164 foot, it can be a bit cumbersome sometimes to work with. But I just kind of roughly, I get my poles that everything hooks up to, right, and where everything opens up. I get them roughly where I want them, and then I just kind of lay a rough circle. You can see it laying on the ground. And now all I got to do is go around and step the poles in, just step on them to drive them down into the ground, which will be easy because we've gotten some rain. And it makes it a fairly quick process. And if you're like us in our current situation where we want to be able to move them all around the yard and eat down different pieces of the yard so I don't have to mow it and so that they can eat the weeds, they can turn the weeds into good quality protein or milk or something like that, right? Rather than using the lawnmower. This Premier One fencing, once again, I'm not sponsored by them. I make no money off of them. They don't sell me their stuff cheap or nothing like that. But man, this stuff works excellent for this. Now I will say, with our goats anyway, we got them young, and the first day or two, the electric fence, they'd hit it and they'd go forward instead of backward. So you had to spend some time with them. But after that first day, I think we've had goats out. We had goats out that first Sunday. When we come home from church, we had a goat out. And this morning I had a goat out, and that's been about it. Other than that, we've had them for a while now, and we usually don't get very many escapees. But let's set the fence up. So once you kind of get the first few poles set up, it's a pretty easy process then. You just work your circle around, stretch it tight. You may have to adjust depending on rocks and those kinds of things. But it's a fairly simple straightforward process. Doesn't take all that long. If you're only moving them, especially every few days, it makes it even easier. And that's it. One of the secrets to a successful move, don't feed them till you move them. Come on, goats. Come on, goats. Good job. Come on, come this way. Got it. Come on. Thanks for your help, Sylvie. Hey, you're standing in your feet. There we go. That went pretty well, guys. Now we just fill the water trough. Of course, making sure that the fence is off. If you're wondering about like our kids and stuff, if you're like, man, your little kids, they're gonna get into the fence, it's gonna shock them. You are correct, but here's the deal. They learn pretty quick. It's always the oldest one's job to make sure the fence is off when the kids come out to play, but inevitably the kids will get into it sooner or later. And when they do, it shocks them and they learn kind of like the goats. All right, let's sit down in the shade, let's drink some water, and let's talk about the WEF wanting to embed themselves into the educational system. Now, that is not my words, that is theirs, and I'll show you directly from the WEF's website, because you don't have to go to no tinfoil hat wearing site, no right-wing extremist, white supremacy group, or nothing like that. All you have to do is go to the WEF's website, scroll through their articles, and you will find one that says they want to embed themselves into the educational system, to change the educational system so that everything from college to elementary children will be taught the ways of the WEF, if you will. Remembering that the WEF and the UN, they are all the same people and all the same players, all pulling for the same things. So, things like sustainable development goals being taught to your children, and in those goals being that it is good for everybody to have an identification issued by the world government, and that identification being tied to your currency. See, things will be taught to your children like that is a good thing, even though the Bible tells us that it will get you sent straight to a lake of fire that burns forever and ever without end. So that would not be a good thing for your kid to learn. Not including all of the woke ideology and all the alternative lifestyles that fly directly in the face of Christian teaching. We as children of God need to make some decisions. How are we going to educate our children in the future? Are we going to change the school boards? Are we going to change the way our schools are ran? Are we going to take a stand and say enough is enough? If our teachers and our principals and our counselors and if everybody is going to teach this to my children, then I'm going to pull my kids out of school and I'll find another way to educate them. Are we actually going to make a change within the educational system? Because that, in a perfect world, might be how it would work out, right? Where you get the right school board members in there and all of the such, and they actually have a change in the educational system at their school where they abandon things like letting the WEF embed into the educational system. That is probably in the perfect world, but however, on a grand scale, that's not going to happen. So we as children of God need to make some decisions on how it is we're going to raise our children, which may mean you have to change your lifestyle, which means you need to ask yourself, what is more important, a change of lifestyle where maybe I don't have 3 cars in the driveway and I don't go on vacation every year and all of these things? Or is it more important to teach my children what we believe to be proper and right values? And to teach them things like, I don't know, reading and writing and arithmetic. Those are decisions you're going to have to make. I can't make them for you. I know for myself and my wife, for our family, what we decided best was not to send our kids to the public educational system. What we decided was best for them is that we would educate our children and that we would choose how we socialized our children. And we would choose how to handle those things in such a way that we had a little bit more control over it. See, I understand there was a time and a place where you could have made an argument that it was better to send your children to public school, where it was better for them socially, where it was better for them to get all of the different influences from all these different teachers and all of those things. However, I believe we have crossed the Rubicon, if you will. we have crossed those waters, and now we are at a time where a person needs to make some real decisions. See, we're going to teach our children some crazy things like God created the earth in 7 days. We're going to teach them that. Now, will we tell them that there are other theories out there, and will we show them other theories to them in great detail? You bet, but they'll be presented as theories because that's what they are. And factually, they don't work. Scientifically, truly scientifically, they don't work. So, my question, I guess, to you today is, who do you want educating your children? We appreciate you guys watching. We'll catch you on the next video.